Alright, so today we will be covering how to mix a beat in Logic. How to mix a hip hop beat in Logic. There will be other tutorials as well that'll show you how to do trap beats, how to get your 808s right, things like that. This particular video is going to focus more on just understanding how to move around in Logic, how to mix a beat in Logic, how you want the beat to be hitting as far as the volume, amplitude, things like that. So when you're ready to bounce it, move it over to another door or even record it in here, everything will be right. So just let's do a quick breakdown of this beat. This is a new style of beat of instrumentals I'm kind of working with. I started with the bass on this one. So this is inspired by like the Motown sound, Funk Brothers. Y'all don't know who that is, whatever. Go do some research, especially if you really like that smooth sound. If you want to incorporate other things into hip hop, that's definitely somebody you should know. Definitely if you incorporate in music. But let's get into it. As far as the mixing on certain things, right? With mixing, sometimes less is more. So with this, first thing I'm gonna do in this situation is simply listen, right? Want to simply listen to see what it needs. With bass, especially something that sounds like a live sounding bass, is very difficult to manipulate so much in the box, like in the DAW, right? And you don't want to do too much because you don't want to lose the personality and character of the bass. So the bass is usually going to be the most difficult thing to mix for you, really. But with bass, you can use a number of things. You know what I mean? You can go in there with some saturation. Really is the best thing to kind of tame a bass. But you also, a big part that's going to play is volume when it comes to bass, right? So with this, I use this plugin from Abbey Road, real good plugin, Abbey Road plugin. I don't even remember what the name of this plugin is. Let's see, it's the saturator. Okay, so I use the saturator, which is pretty much, they have things designed in there that's going to help you to tame that bass a little bit. Because remind you, you don't want to do too much with this bass. You just want to kind of bring the character out of it, the structure out of it. All right, so also on this bass, right, you can pull up an EQ on here. What I might do is cut 0 to about 50, 60. What I would do, if I knew I was going to have a lot of low end on this particular song, I will cut it more, right? I will go, because you want to make space for all the different dynamics you're going to have and the frequencies that's going to register in here. So with this particular one, I'm not going to cut it so crazy because I know I'm not going to include an 808 on this beat. I know that the only other thing that's going to sit this low would be the kick drum as well as the vocal. So I'm going to allow the bass to have the lowest frequency in this particular beat, right? So I know everything from about 50 up to about 100 is where the bass is going to live. So now when doing that and creating the beat, and not to get too much into the beat making sphere, right? But now if you're a producer when creating the beat, think about that going ahead of it, right? Because I know this is going to sit that low. So let me think about where my kick drum sits. Let me think about where the vocal is going to sit. You don't want to clutter too much stuff in one particular area. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be muddy. It's not going to sound smooth. It's not going to sound clean. So this is where we at with that. So that's why I did that. All right, now let's move on. So again, that's why I said less is more. I didn't really even do too much more with this particular bass. I did use the saturation, and then I also did a little cut on the EQ at 50. You know what I mean? Then when mixing, I usually would start with the kick because the kick is going to be loudest, right? So you want to start with your loudest sound. And one thing I want to make sure we back up and take a step and look at real quick before we move forward. Super, super, super important. You want to go to your master and bus and you want to put a level meter. You want to be able to see where everything is hitting at. So you're going to use a mixture of hearing it audibly, but you're also going to go in and look at where it's hitting at on the leveling meter. Now, I know with a beat, before it's going into its mastering phase, before it's in Pro Tools or whatever DAW you use where you're going to be ready to record it in that, you don't want to have the beat going too crazy, too loud to where there's no headroom, and now you wondering why the beat is distorted, why the vocals got to be super loud to get to the beat, or you're gonna have to lower the beat, and then now you're losing a lot of personality and character from the beat. You want to mix the beat out at a low enough decibel to that when you put it into a DAW that you're gonna use to record it, or even if you're gonna record it in here, that you have plenty of headroom to give it dynamic and compress it without it being distorted. So with any beat, hip hop, trap, R&B, whatever, I like -12. You know what I mean, for a mix. I like -12 for a mix. So let's see what this bass is hitting at. See, that bass look like it's nowhere. -30. It look like it ain't doing nothing. But look, if I raise this volume up crazy, or when I put it into another program, you'll see how much louder it's going to get. That's why you want to do just subtle things. So let's see. All right, that's it. Okay, so now let's go over to the kick. Every video you see me on, I'm going to definitely emphasize listening, for sure, because more than anything else, listening is always key. Listen. Listen for what you're doing, because one beat may require something completely different than another beat requires. One sound that you're looking for may require something different than another sound. So use the technical skills, but use your ears more than anything. So let's see. All right, that's the kick drum. So what I did, I used a plugin called CLA Drums on here. Let's hear that kick drum without it. Hold on, wait. Let's hear the kick without it first. So let's say we don't got this plugin, right? Let's say I'm using just straight EQ to do this. First thing I'm gonna notice is I hear a little bit of like a boxy sound I don't like. So let's go ahead and find that frequency where that boxy sound is pretty much coming from, so that you can go ahead and determine what you want to do. So let's say I didn't have that plugin, right? Let's go use some EQ. Okay. All right, let's go in and sweep the frequencies. So somewhere between 200 and like 800 will reduce that boxy sound. But if you notice, remember what I was saying earlier, look at where the character of that particular kick is hitting at. It's like between 60 and 80. So I know we don't want it to clash too much with the bass guitar itself. So these two things could live in the same space, especially because this particular kick drum is not real low and heavy, so it's not gonna conflict so much. You know what I mean? Like the character of this particular kick is not that low frequency like 808, like an 808 would be. If I had an 808, it's no way it's gonna be able to live on the same frequency as a bass guitar. It just won't work. You know what I mean? Let's see. And me again, knowing with sound, I'm going for on this particular beat, you could go and use compression to get this right, but I don't need compression in this. I use my CLA drum. Let me see. My CLA plugin. Now that plugin does have a little bit of compression on here. It has, where you can switch up treble, reverb, you can use a gate to just kind of give it a different sound. Now let's hear it with this enabled now. Didn't do too much but tame the harsh sounds that I hear in that particular drum for this sound that I'm going for. Now look, being that I know this is going to be my loudest sound, this is the sound that's going to be hitting at -12. Everything else I know is going to be below -12. This is my loudest sound. This is usually what I want to start with. So let's hear it together with the kick and with the bass guitar. Where's that bass though? Make it even turn the bass up a little bit, but not too much. All right. Now, next, I used snare. This snare I use is from Native Instruments, I believe, Battery, which a lot of their sounds come. You don't really need to do too much to them except for adjust volume. And there's some sounds that you have that's in your stock library that are the same way. So just because a sound um doesn't have EQ or compression or whatever yet, don't just add it because you think you need to add it because people say you got to add EQ and compression. First thing first, listen to it and see if it needs it, and then also go into the EQs and look at it and see where it's hitting at. If it's, if it needs to be tamed, then tame it. But if it don't do too much. All right, what is this? All right, this is the second drum. I always like to do little second drums under ghost drums, but not really being used as a ghost drum. And this one really being just used as like a little bit more low end for that top drum, just to give it a little less boxy feel. So if you hear that drum itself without the heavy drum, let's hear it. See, you barely know it's there. You won't even know it's there. It's more for listening, more for giving it more just feeling. It's a feeling sound. And it's a lot of sounds when producing beats that are feeling sounds that are there, that does produce a feeling, but it's not really going to be audible so much as to something you just feel. All right, now let's see what's next. Don't take it from me. You 100% should probably be labeling the name of your sounds. You can double click in here if you're on Logic, double click and you could just name this drum. You could name this drum 2. You could name this snare, whatever. That's what you should be doing. You know what I mean? I'm making a lot of beats and I kind of have my own method in my own brain, so I kind of know what I'm doing, but don't be like me. Name and label the rest of your sounds. All right, what is this? Let's find that snare. Same thing with this snare, right? With this snare, I know I'm going for like a live funk type of sound, so I'm not about to do too much and make it too computerized on this particular beat. I don't want it to lose. I want it to have a little bit of grittiness in this beat. You know what I mean? So let's hear that snare. It works. I ain't need to do anything to that snare. I just left it as is. That goes back to using your ear. Don't overdo it. And this when it comes to volume being super important. Like if something doesn't require EQ and compression and gating and all of that, make sure you use volume. Even when you do use those things, use volume to your advantage, because sometimes simply raising or lowering the volume on something is all that particular sound actually needs. All right, so let's see what we got next. Hi-hat, simple DS. I want to hit this with a DS on particularly most hi-hats, right? So with a hi-hat, if it's like a 808 heavy track or something like that, more modern, I'm probably going to raise it, the frequency from the 8 to about 20K frequency, just raise it about 3 to 5 dB just to give it a little bit more clarity. You see, that's what that would do. But in this beat, I don't want my hi-hat to be, I want it to be more felt than heard in this one. So I'm not going to raise that, but I will de-S it to reduce sibilance. So. Simple, not too much to it, right? Move on. What's next? All right. Another hi-hat situation. This is more like more like closed hi-hats. You know what I mean? Just to kind of complement the other hats. Same thing, de-S it, keep it pushing on that. It doesn't need anything else. I don't need to cut it too much in the low end. It has no life living in the low end. If you look at it, it doesn't have any. It's already kind of sitting where it needs to sit on a frequency spectrum. So why touch it if it don't need to be touched? You know what I mean? So next thing I came in with, little quick piano. Nothing crazy on the piano. Pianos, much like bass guitars, especially grand pianos, if you're going for straight piano sound, is could be difficult to mix too. That's why back to the ear situation, because when it comes down to these, it's like, what sound are you going for? Do I want like a more like grand piano deep sound, dark sound? Then if that's the case, then I'm gonna make sure I raise it a little bit more. I'm gonna make sure I maneuver it that way to manipulate it in the way that I want it to be to accomplish the sound I'm looking for. With this, it's more of a complementary sound. It's not like the driving number one leading sound in this beat. So let's just hear the piano alone. Simple. Now there's another plugin, that a Waves plugin that's real good. It's called Piano Centric. Clear piano. I use that particular setting. Another thing I do like to do on pianos, same thing, going to the EQ. See if it's too much low end happening. On this piano, is not. I can already see that the life of this piano is living between 200 to 1K hertz somewhere. You know what I mean? That's what. So now, if I wanted to just be like, let me bring out some more life in this piano, let me grab one of these bands and let me narrow it, and then raise it, right, to see, not too much, but just to see where, if I wanted to get this piano more life, what would I need to do? I could raise it like 200, 400, 5. Just things to keep in mind. But in this case, I won't, because the piano sits exactly where I need it to sit. What I thought I would have had to do when I first made this was lower the low end from like 20 hertz to maybe 200. I didn't though, because it already, for some reason, this particular piano was already mixed right. You know what I mean? Like when I went in there, I played the chords, whatever the case is, it was mixed how it was supposed to be mixed as far as the sound frequency. Like the particular sound that they put into the door was already mixed good, so I didn't need to do it. Now let's continue. This guitar, this is a guitar I use from Arcade. With electric guitar sound, acoustic guitar sound, if I'm not going to play it directly, like into a microphone myself, those are sounds I'm going to sample. It's almost impossible to accomplish that real guitar feel or real guitar, acoustic guitar sound through a keyboard. You know what I mean? Some people may be good enough to manipulate it that way, but even then, like you're never going to get that real feel for it. So for guitar sound, acoustic guitar or an electric guitar, you got a better shot at an acoustic guitar than an electric guitar. I mean, at an electric guitar than an acoustic guitar providing that real sound, in my opinion. Just because of some of the nuances, the strums, like different thing, you're not gonna hear it. So I don't attempt it on these. You know what I mean? I will use a sample for acoustic or electric guitar. And then the next sound I came in with was this sound. Just a subtle in and out sound. Let's go into the EQ. Again, didn't require a whole lot. So now most of this beat revolves around gain staging, using your gain correctly, cutting low frequencies where you need to cut them, but also I think understanding the dynamics of where your sounds are going to sit is just much as important as mixing your sounds, because by doing that, I'm not fighting to make things fit in areas they shouldn't be in anyway. So if I had 3-4 sounds fighting in the 100 to 200, 300 range, I would have to go in and do all types of different stuff just to manipulate and move things around for it to sit properly in the beat and for everything to still sound cohesive. But with that, it's a fight, because you would be fighting for instance, let's say the piano was sitting in the same place where the bass guitar is sitting. I can move it around and change it around to where the life of the piano is now sitting somewhere else, but does it still have that same sound I was looking for? You know what I mean? And I had to do that in order to make it, the bass guitar still sit correctly. So in the process of doing that, I can do it, but is it still going to sound like it's supposed to sound when it's all said and done? So be conscious and mindful of where your vocals are going to be sitting, where the other instruments are going to be sitting when even choosing sounds. You know what I mean? So let's hear it together. Oh yeah, and this turnaround I did, this is the one thing, usually I would 100% I'm not gonna put in most modern beats, I'm not gonna put a kick drum with a hi-hat and a snare on the same track because you want them to be mixed individually. They sit in different places. Because I know I'm going with like a more live sound in this particular beat, I left for the turnaround and the pickup, I left it kind of on the same pattern in this particular one. So let's hear it. Perfect. Real simple. There will be other tutorials. I will show other beats, more modern beats, different stuff that require different things. But this particular beat and the message and lesson to learn here is whatever beat it is, listen, use your ears and use your decision making skills to determine what is required for this particular piece of work that I'm doing right now. Don't you just feel like you can use a cookie cutter approach for every single thing you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, use your decision making skills to determine what this particular one needs. Now, if you could see after it's all said and done, nothing is sitting above -12 on this, right? All right, simple, fast, and easy, man. Make sure y'all definitely hit that subscribe down there. Hit the bell button if you found something useful in this video. I will be coming back with more videos to deconstruct different beats I did, different vocal chains I will show, and I'm also going to create a vocal chain inside Logic as well, just to kind of demonstrate what we can do to mix in Logic as well. So definitely tap in.